Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode number 61 of the Audible Farm podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee is roasted right here in Iowa, and you can have coffee that's been roasted in Iowa shipped to your house, and you can make it at your house at your own leisure, and it is amazing coffee. Andrew Chipman at Couchtown Coffee has been very good to us over here at the Audible Farm podcast, and I just want to say a huge shout out to him for doing all the awesome stuff he does. He shares some of the links we have. We discuss things over text messages as far as what goes on in the podcast. And I also drink the amazing coffee that Andrew roasts. So I implore everybody to check out www.couchtowncoffee.com. Find a coffee you like, and then send them an email, make an order. You can also save 20% on your order this week because you're awesome and you're listening to the podcast. So if you want to save 20% this week, make an order between the 14th and the 20th of November in 2019 and use the code word Marbin. It's in the description section. Check out the code word Marbin, use it, save 20%, get yourself some of the best coffee that Iowa has to offer. Get yourself some Couchtown coffee. Why is this week's code word Marbin? Well, that's kind of a crazy one. This week I'm sitting down with Dani Rabin from Marbin, and Dani, well, I guess I've been following them online for a long time, at least all of Marbin. They're really active on their Facebook. They're based out of Chicago, and I had an opportunity to go see them live. I hit them up. I said, Dani, you want to sit down and do a little talk with me, and we can discuss some of the things that are going on, because they are very, very active online, as well as touring and just going all over the U.S. and beyond playing music. We discuss all sorts of things, such as their hashtag of Marbin Strikes Back. We discuss the quest for tone. We discuss going down to Mexico and playing a show. We discuss all sorts of cool things in here. He is very, very well versed in all things music, and he's did a really good job of laying down some analogies that really kind of hit home, and I'm pretty proud of this episode. Dani did an amazing job, and I'm really glad that he took some time out of his busy day on the last day of his tour to sit down and talk with me for about an hour or so. So shout out to you, Dani. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody in Marbin, for doing the tours and stuff and swinging back through Lefties. That was a great time. I had a great time at that show seeing the Maw. It had been a while since I'd seen the Maw, and those guys are tons of fun. So I really had a great time seeing the Maw live. It had been about a year or so since I've seen them. They don't play too many shows, but when they do, you better go out and see them because they're that good. Otherwise, Dead Emperors were there, and I was pretty wowed by Dead Emperors. They're from Iowa City area. They're a great band. I'd like to sit down and talk with one of them eventually, and maybe I'll have an opportunity because it appears that Three Finger Betty's got a show coming up with them later. Check the Three Finger Betty Facebook page for more info on that. But this episode's all about Marbin. It's about Dani, where he comes from, what's going on, where he went to school, how he met the other Dani in the band, what kind of music he plays, etc., etc. And it's a really good episode. I usually try to stick with people who are a little lesser known, but I figured why not talk to Dani? He's right there. He agreed to talk with me, and everybody deserves a little bit of exposure, whether or not it's Marbin or Uncle or the Eleanors or whoever. So I just hope everybody enjoys this episode this week. I went a little different avenue and interviewed somebody that was a little bit more popular, but nonetheless, this episode's still amazing. So thanks everybody for checking it out. I hope you enjoy the episode. We will start it up here. All right, this is episode 61 with Dani Rabin.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, so I'm sitting down today with Dani Rabin.
That's right.
You are the guitarist in Marbin.
Yep.
And Marbin is from Chicago. Is that where you guys are based out of?
We're based out of Chicago, yeah.
But
not from there.
No. Well, Where are you from originally?
Israel.
Israel.
I'm from a town called Rehovot.
Okay, I'm not going to try and pronounce that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It means streets.
Streets?
That's the literal translation. So
it's a town.
I'm from the streets.
You're from the streets.
Yeah.
The mean streets.
The mean streets of Rehovot.
So what brought you over here then?
Music.
Music.
Yeah.
Did you like come to school over here to do music or?
I initially went to Berklee College
cool.
of Music, 2003.
Nice.
And then I graduated 2007.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back for a summer to Israel and I met Dani Markovich. And then we came to Chicago together. I moved from Boston to Chicago.
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, we just started, well, eventually we started Marbin and, it went through a few transformations.
Yeah, the band has changed a little bit over the years. I mean, I've seen different drummers and
lineups.
bassists.
Yeah.
But you and Dani and Dani,
yeah,
you guys have been the two that have been.
Yeah, we wrote the music.
Yep.
And Marbin is Markovich Rabin, so
Oh,
yeah, we would have to.
there you go.
Yeah.
I was wondering where the name came from.
Yeah. So we would have to find another person that has that in their name if we wanted to change lineups.
Yeah. It's already tattooed onto the band. It can't be changed.
No, cannot be changed. We actually were discussing how stupid of a name that is for years, but then, and like our fifth album, the name is Aggressive Hippies,
Yep.
and we thought that's a great name for a band. But then we started seeing all these bands that have names with literal meaning, and it will just suck to be on stage and just be like, we are aggressive hippies, we are aggressive every night, you know. So I'm actually now coming full circle to the beginning and thinking that it's brilliant to have a name that doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
Because you can.
I totally get that because it's up to whoever's listening's interpretation.
Also you don't fall into your own self-fulfilling prophecy.
Bingo. Yeah.
You know, it's like I would hate to be Cannibal Corpse. I know they're playing in town tonight too.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, it's like we are Cannibal Corpse.
Yeah,
we are after 25 years, you're all fat and old, and you're like, I am Cannibal Corpse.
It becomes a caricature of yourself, almost
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to pick on bands, but when the Misfits went back on tour, they got picked on a lot because they weren't quite what they used to be.
Yeah.
So
Metallica's a great name.
Yeah.
Means nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Has metal in it.
Okay, let me ask you this: how many people? This is going to sound really dumb. How many people have tried to interact with you thinking one of you guys is named Marbin?
Oh, I get that all the time because I do all the Facebook Live stuff.
Yeah.
So they're like, Marbin, I love your playing. I'm like, yep.
Yes,
but it's
our
inevitable.
Playing is good. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people think that's because we're not from this country, so they look at us and hear maybe a little bit of accent, especially when Dani talks that must be a name from their culture. But Marbin's not a Hebrew thing. It's just Markovich Rabin.
That's awesome. I guess I never even knew that either.
Yeah.
But I've been following you guys online for quite a while. And that was one of the things that drew me to you guys originally was the fact that you had a ridiculously big following on Facebook. You were constantly posting things. You
Still am.
You would do the sponsored content, so every time you were around, I would see that you were doing a show. I mean, you were always really good and active about that. Other things I would see would you're interacting with people. So you would go live and just be like, I'm playing at this coffee shop in this town, and I'm going to teach you a little bit of something about this.
Yeah.
And you went to Berklee School of Music, so you're a little bit above my level of playing because I can play guitar, but half the time I get about 5 minutes into what you're talking about. I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about at all anymore. So
well, I mean, I get some criticism from people who would like me to slow down the pace or explain some things that are a little simpler, but the internet's very slam packed with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think the kind of thing I'm going for, I think it's helpful for people who have some sort of background in jazz, and I think it's helpful for other people to understand that this stuff is a language and just kind of get generally inspired. And if somebody is using terminology that you're not familiar with, then I think a big part of inspiration is just going out and seeking out those words. Like people keep saying, I don't know, fifths, or talking about intervals, or saying triads, and you're not quite sure what that means. So it's like you're missing that piece of Lego that that kind of like constructs that bigger meaning.
Exactly.
And you don't need your hand held through everything in music. A lot of time it's just enough to just be like, oh my God, I'm sick of not understanding what that word is. Let's look it up. And but yeah, it tends to be that the thing people are really lacking is the drive to start a big project like learning theory from scratch.
Yeah.
Because it seems bigger than it is.
I mean, I've got like basic music theory, so the concepts you're teaching are not like super foreign to me, but in the general gist of what's going on, I'm still kind of like, you're a little over my head because I've only taken like level 1 music theory.
Yeah.
So I know basically kind of what you're talking about when you're talking about, we're in the Ionian here, and but then you start to get kind of crazy when you're talking about, we could play this pattern, and then if you go to the second, this pattern, and the third is this pattern, the fourth. Like you were doing that the other day, and I was watching, and like I said, I got like 3 minutes in on.
Well, the question is, where do you get lost, and why, right?
That's true.
So it's like you just gotta like find exactly like that point where somebody's talking and you're no longer following. It's like what a good, like if you want to get actually inspired to learn something, all you gotta ask yourself is what happened there. Right? It's like that point where I said something and you're all of a sudden kind of off the train.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, so how do I stay just past that moment? What is that thing I didn't understand that made me confused? And I think if you tackle your practice one thing at a time, eventually you'll run out of things. Yeah. You just be able to be a part of the conversation. I think the talk about music theory isn't as infinite or complex as you might think it is.
Yeah.
The real part where people start falling off that train is where you have to apply the theory to your instrument and sound good.
Exactly.
But
I could see that a lot because I learned music theory like when I was like 18 on a piano. And then by the time I was like 28 and wanted to try to apply what I learned 10 years ago to a guitar, it was completely different because I was trying to take a concept and apply it to a completely different thing.
Sure. I think when we teach a lot of master classes in universities and high schools and do that kind of stuff when we're touring in the day, and we get to see where people disagree with the way we teach and the way we talk, because there's a lot of contradicting ideas floating around right now in the world of music, and I think there's not a whole lot of consensus about the meaning of words in general, especially when you get specialized, like when you say harmony. Negative harmony is like a thing now, but like, never mind that, but like, harmony theory even, people don't agree on what music theory is. And you get to see a lot of people who are very married to maybe a definition of something that their first music teacher gave them that might not be, useful to them. So the way I would look at music theory is very unlike scientific theory. And that's very confusing for people, because when people think about theory, they think about relativity or gravity.
Yep, it's a law.
Something like scientific theory, where it's something that you can prove or disprove, right? But music theory doesn't work like that. Like, you get rules. Rules in music are like, you can't play a C sharp on a C chord, and then you go to a piano and you go plank. Did it.
Yep.
So it's like, what does it mean, can't?
That's true.
You can do whatever you want. The problem is it sounds, it makes a sound, and what you're really doing is you're categorizing. So it's less like scientific theory, and it's more like owning a gigantic library where you have millions of books and you're the librarian.
All right.
And a good librarian has a choice of how he's going to organize all these books.
That
right?
makes sense, yeah.
So you can do it by width, height, name of author, name of publication, era, whatever. And then you get into these positions where there's a job to do, meaning somebody can walk into your library and say, I want, all the books written in France between 1932 and 1934. Now, if that's the job, and you organized all your books by width, you're fucked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it's like, if the job is playing jazz and the way you have arranged your knowledge is the way that's useful for the job of a classical musician, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do, right? Your theoretical understanding doesn't suit the task at hand.
That makes sense.
Most people can't commit to a task at hand. And you see it a lot. If your task is playing rock, right, or blues, and you learn pentatonic scales and have great vibrato and nice tone and know all these rock songs, and now all of a sudden you want to play jazz.
Yeah.
Right? Your system of organizing your musical world, it's not that it's terrible, it's just not suited for the job. So
Yeah.
you got to rethink about where you're going to put all these books, or maybe like you got to come up with like new ways of categorizing things.
Exactly.
You know, so but right now more and more what you see is it's almost, you know how kids now are not even playing video games, they're watching people playing video games.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
all these sites where you get to see somebody watching somebody else do something. That's more and more prevalent because you have so many examples of people who can play things, like you're scrolling through Instagram. So the net time that you're touching your instrument and figuring stuff out on your own is getting reduced because you're just consuming content, consuming other people doing things. And, you know, that's a very bad thing.
That makes sense.
If you need to get, like, just watching endless examples of people sounding okay is not a substitute for practicing, you know? So you need to spend
Oh
a
my
ton
God.
of time holding the instrument, and, like, the moment you see something interesting, you have, like, two urges that are competing. One is to go to the next video of another interesting thing, to understand it deeper, maybe another explanation. But all you're doing is getting better at Googling, you know? So you got to put it on the instrument and put it in, like, just like this grinding again and again from different angles is what gets you good eventually.
Yeah, that makes total sense because, I mean, every time I see you and you're online, either doing Facebook Live or whatever, you're almost never just sitting there talking. You almost always have a guitar in your hand.
Yeah.
So it's one of those other things where you have constant exposure to always touching a guitar, and you're not just sitting at a laptop Googling stuff. And
you know, for me, all the gypsy jazz stuff for me was, you know, really a hobby. It's very fun, but it's not what I do full time, which is Marbin. But, you know, still, everything feeds each other, and, you know, I'm always playing. I'm always trying to get better at something.
yeah,
You know, when it comes to music, I'm constantly thinking about, you know, what tools I don't have, how to improve the things I do have, like, you know, how to improve technique, just fretboard knowledge. Like, you know, there's always, if you're really looking, you know, you're always in a position where there's so much more you don't know than what you do know. Like,
Yeah.
what you do know is such a narrow band. It's like, you know, I know some things. I know how to sound good through some songs, but, you know, it's not like my vocabulary is not endless.
yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, there's a popular quote that goes something like, as the island of your knowledge grows, so does the shore of your ignorance.
Right.
So, you know, the bigger your knowledge is, you just realize you realize how much you don't know the more you learn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a crazy concept to think about.
Well, with music, it's weird because at a certain point, there's like this one leap that some people do, which is the leap into sounding good, you know? And it's very amazing because there are, like, once you become a voice on your instrument, not a lot of people make that leap to where they just are a thinker that just kind of is one of the mouthpieces. And it's almost like there are two scales. There's the scale of sounding bad and the scale of sounding good. And some people are very low on the scale of sounding good, and some people are very high on the scale of sounding
Yeah.
bad. But those two don't ever touch.
Okay, yeah. I
You
see
know what
you're
I
saying.
mean?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's like waking up, coming to awareness or something. That thing where you actually start playing, where you just kind of sink into yourself and you're like, oh, like, this is for real, and I'm playing for real, and I get to actually move things in time and color things, you know, and make choices that have weight. And before you do that, you're just kind of like a kid playing. And a lot of people just never wake up, you know. And there's nothing to do, you know. There's nothing to do for people like that. You have to. It's kind of like a rite of passage kind of thing. Some people just seem to get there and some don't.
Yes,
And-
you have to take the initiative yourself to put in the work by yourself. Because so much of what people think is like, this guy's a guitar player. He's out there every night and he's just shredding it up, and chicks are hanging off of him and blah. Like, how much time did you spend alone at your house doing guitar stuff to get as good as you did, and it's...
Oh, I still do.
Yeah.
I still spend most of my time
And I
alone doing that stuff.
And along with that, I really enjoy the analogy you made of there's a scale of bad guitar players, and you can be the best bad guitar player or like one of the people that's a good guitar player, and if you're in the lower echelons of that, there's a big leap between there. And when you described it like that, I remember just being that kid with a guitar, and it's like, oh, I'm just playing tabs. Somebody wrote this, and this has to be what it is, like this. So you're just going by whatever somebody tells you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere in my 20s, I was just like, I'm going to start trying to pick up like rock and blues and scales and trying to figure out theory and put it all together on a guitar. And I started doing exactly what you're saying. I had this like epiphanic moment where I realized I was learning things, and I could go out to like blues jam nights and actually fit in with these people and do things and have a tiny little bit of a voice of my own. I mean, granted, so many people there were so much better than me at the time, but it was still one of those things where you said it's this weird leap you take. Even if you're at the very bottom of the people that are good at playing, it's just kind of like, wow, this is something different, completely different than what I was doing before.
Well, as a listener, it's very obvious, at least for me. It's like it's so weird because like it's hard to talk about this balance between subjectivity and objectivity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like Charlie Parker to me is objectively, if not the best, for sure one of the best saxophone players that ever lived. Why? Well, because if I have to like kind of rank them, against every other saxophone player, I can pretty logically like say kind of grade them to be that way. But it's hard to. It's hard in the field of aesthetics to break, like, how can you make objective claims in something that you perceive like absolutely subjectively?
Exactly. Yeah.
But still, it's like it's easier in sports, right? Like Michael Jordan is objectively one of the greatest, right?
Yes.
And it's weird because music is almost like nobody would listen to a 5-year-old and Charlie Parker play and say that the Charlie Parker and that the 5-year-old is better, even though they both might make sounds, right?
Exactly.
And in kind of a postmodern world, you could say that they're both equal, but it doesn't really work like that. We notice. Miles Davis has a good quote that he said that I'm not the best because there's no such thing, but I'm one of the best.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, even though I don't think he's one of the best, but he thought so. But it's a tricky kind of thing. So, but the point I was originally trying to make was that as listeners, we know what quality is when we're faced with it. I believe, at least I can say that I do, and there are all sorts of qualities that exist, and I think the healthy, you can make healthy choices with listening just like you can with food. So I'm not gonna name any people I hate, but like there's a lot of music I dislike, and not because it's terrible, but because it's poisonous. Like McDonald's. It's the McDonald's of music, to where it's like produced to satiate this thing inside you that's hungry for garbage and leaves you feeling worse than when you first got on the ride.
Yeah, there's no nutritional value to
No, and some people just there's some people are just so good that it goes beyond your mechanisms of like jealousy or
I get exactly what you're saying. Going back to the sports analogy, it's like Tom Brady. Love him or hate him, he's friggin' good.
Yeah.
That's the reason people love or hate him, So it transcends whether or not you like the person, actually. And it's just like, well, obviously the guy's good, and that's why you don't like him. Or you do like him, So same thing with some musicians. They're so good at what they do, it's like you can't say they're not good.
Yeah. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but you could just be wrong. But it's... listening to Django Reinhardt or Charlie Parker or Mozart, it's the kind of thing that's designed to make you feel something that you need to feel, right? Rather than something that's just targeting the weakest part of your brain.
Yeah,
or just hungry for a beat.
I mean, you can even take that and extrapolate it. Like, if you only practiced like Ramones punk songs, and I'm not trying to crap on anyone, but if that's all you ever practiced and you got the best at that, you're not really utilizing too much of your learning ability by only ingesting that. And like I said, I'm not trying to crap on the Ramones or anybody that because
I
like,
barely even know him, so it's okay.
Yeah, but it's just punk music, you know.
Yeah.
It's power chord, 3-chord punk music, but it's still one of those deals where like if that's all you're doing and that's the only thing you're doing, you're not expanding your width of knowledge or your practicing regimen or anything like that any farther than that.
Sure.
It's not like it kind of comes back to this almost quote unquote poisonous like we were talking about earlier. You're not doing yourself any favors in that aspect too. So it could come down to even like not just listening, but like as far as what you're learning on the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you can have a good path through art and music if you just are honest about how things make you feel. You know, because like when you're doing aesthetic things, the whole point of it is to make people, you know, and yourself, you know, feel something. So the depth of what you're able to give can't ever be larger than the depth of what you can perceive. So whatever kind of defining electric moment you have with music kind of defines the pinnacle of what you're capable of, right? So like the deep experiences you have maybe as a kid, maybe as an adult, realizing things, diving deep, you know, having some sort of reaction to music, that's kind of like the groove inside you that defines the depth of what you're able to communicate to another person. People can't it's like I heard an author talk about this, that you can't ever write a character that's funnier than you are, you know, or smarter than you are, because you have these human limits on you, and
you can't imagine yourself to be funnier.
Yeah,
you know?
So it's like you can't have an emotional depth that you're incapable of in your music, you know.
That's actually really deep and really brilliant.
Yeah. So
yeah, we're busting out some good stuff here today. Like while we're on this topic, kind of like maybe have people having different opinions about music. You're no stranger to people having opinions that differ from yours online. Because you have so many Facebook followers, you also have a lot of Facebook detractors, let's say.
The Marbin Strikes Back?
Yes, sir. I'm talking about the hashtag of Marbin Strikes Back, which a few years ago I thought was like, man, these guys are ballsy doing this. And then after a while, it's like, yeah, why shouldn't they strike back? You know, there's so many people.
Well, we just decided that we're going to have like a zero tolerance policy to it. So, and it's just, well, first of all, they don't understand. We control the conversation in the sense that the way Marbin Strikes Back works is they write something, I write something back, they write something back, I write something back, I take a snapshot of it, and then I post it.
Yes.
So I decide when the conversation's over. And that's a lot of, it's like talking shit. It's like hackling in a stand-up show, not realizing that the comedian's holding the mic.
Bingo.
It's not a balanced debate. You're gonna always, you know, and the whole idea of the Strikes Back, it's like, you know, I would never talk shit on the internet, but I'm amazed at the amount of people that would.
That will.
So, yeah. So I always, but also I'm always trying to be not horrible to them.
Bingo.
Personally. But if I'm cranky, sometimes I go over my.
Well, I mean, justifiably so, though. Like some of the things people say, it's pretty attacking of like the music that you guys put out. You know, it's like something. I'm just trying to think of something. It's usually something along the lines of like more notes doesn't equal something, blah blah, whatever, something.
Less is more.
Yeah, and one of the arguments for that is like, why don't you just play more notes and you'll see how fun it is, or like something like, you know, it's just one of those types of deals.
There's literally a billion comebacks, but you know, I always find that the whole less is more thing and aesthetic minimalism and this thing that they're trying to push, that's really popular in our generation, is just none of my favorite. Literally none of my favorite players came from this school of thought.
Yes.
It's so antithetical. It's so ignorant, because if you think about rhythm, which is the guiding principle of music, if you play less diverse rhythms, less subdivisions, then you just have less options. It's just like saying
Yes.
that I don't enjoy colors, so pictures should be black and white from now on.
Yeah.
Because there's too much going on. Like people have already done colors,
Yeah.
but
It's like somebody's sitting with an 8-pack of Crayola crayons, and they're like, "This is the only crayon box you should ever use." And you're sitting here
Yeah.
with a 64 box, and they're like, "You loser,"
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Why am I bad? Because I have more crayons than you,"
yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, when you're trying to improvise, what you're really trying to do is kind of have freedom and have tools to follow ideas to fruition, and yeah, sure. Like a lot of it's really technical, and I also understand. When you're talking about musical phrasing, there's 3 modes of playing that you can lump anybody's solo in history into, right? So you can call them different names, but like the way I like to call them is making statements, which that's kind of like most of B.B. King's playing, things that kind of echo in your mind that you can sing back.
Okay.
Riding the groove, which is just like the talking part of soloing that's kind of like meandering and just feels good but not necessarily memorable.
Okay.
And then there's the shredding, right? It's like the stuff that's dazzling or overwhelming. And those are really the 3 things you can do.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like you can kind of have this, like if you're playing on a show, do do go ga go ga go ga, that kind of thing, and you're playing you're riding the groove. You're not making statements.
Yeah, it's nothing.
But if you go like, and that's fine. It's a part of soloing. And if you go like kind of echoes back in your mind, right?
Yep.
You got that. And if you go like, it's like nobody remembers that, but it
Exactly.
does something.
Yes.
And those 3 things in phrasing in conjunction, in a right balance with each other, create interesting solos.
Yes.
So it's like it's like not. It's like saying like I don't like people who walk on 2 legs. Let's chop off one of the. It's like hop everywhere. It's more interesting.
And
it's like.
Well, I get what you're saying. Like this morning, I was cruising through some of your discography. I was showing someone. I was like, "Well, this is Marbin. They're going to be at Lefties tonight or whatever. Like, check it out."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, this is totally not what I was thinking it was," because I didn't tell them anything about it. It's kind of like showing them a random movie and not telling them anything. And you just like, "Here's the title," and then they get like half an hour into it, like, "Oh, this is what?" Okay, so that was kind of what it was like. But the more I realized it and I listened deeper into your music, because I've seen you guys a handful of times live. I've listened to all your music, but the deeper I listened to it, I realized that exactly those 3 things are almost in every single song in some form, which is kind of cool because you'll sit there and you'll be like, you get some shreddy stuff, but you also get like the phrasing that is the common phrasing through the song, but then there's like shreddy solo-y stuff, and usually somewhere in the middle you guys hit like a groove where everybody's kind of grooving out at the same time. And now that it's kind of crazy that now that you sit here and explain this stuff, I'm finding your music to be a little bit. I'm finding I can understand it a little bit better, because before it was just like it's so foreign to me.
Yeah.
You're in Iowa right now. I'm born and raised in Iowa, so I only have the exposure of what Iowa has to give, and I have no gypsy jazz background at all. Those are 2 backgrounds I don't have anything that I know about. But now that you explain it with that basic outline, I kind of get the gist of it.
But
overall.
I mean, if you listen from that perspective to Charlie Parker or Django or anybody, John Coltrane, they all. It's not that we invented it. It's all you can do. You can't do that many things. There aren't that many things in music, right? So when you're just playing rhythms for people, one of 3 things can happen. They could be memorable, they could be just pleasant and grooving, or they can be dazzling and overwhelming. That's it, right? It's like that's all I mean by that. And a good solo has a balance of those things. So you gotta if you shred the whole time, like. I don't know, like some shrapnel guys like from the 80s where it's just not interesting music. It just sounds like...
There was a point where that happened.
Yeah.
I love shredder. That's probably my favorite style of guitarist is shred playing, but there was a point in the 80s where it's just like, it's overboard.
Right.
You can't play 240 beats per minute, 16th notes the whole time.
A guy like Yngwie, like, to me, like, was super, like, you listen to the solo on like Black Star or something, it's like, it's super balanced. It's like he's playing a lot of like things that are riding the groove, but definitely memorable statements, like all over those solo, like the well, what it do, it's like, the way that solo starts, it's fucking awesome, or like, for the love of God, Steve Vai, it's like tons of statements, but then it's balanced between, all these all the top echelon players in that style had to follow it or it wouldn't have worked.
That makes total sense.
But then you get into like, Rusty Cooley and like, the people kind of after that kind of tried to just shred.
Yep.
And you do get to this thing where it's not less is more. You need to have just as much, but you need to have
the proper balance of it.
Yeah,
all.
you need to understand what makes good solos.
Yeah.
And it's not just the flashy part of it,
Yeah, so the analogy is like most people eat cookies because they're sweet tasting, but you can't make cookies with just like 90% sugar. It doesn't make any sense,
Right. You're not going to like do lines of sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, one of the things when I started like following you guys online and stuff like that, we talked about it first, was you were always online playing. You're always kind of saying like, well, here's how I kind of view this person's style. They used a lot of these phrases or a lot of these patterns, because that's usually what a lot of players do, is they'll pick handfuls of patterns and phrasings and styles they like, and just that's their set that they usually use for the most part. So you can kind of nail down some people's styles pretty good. You're pretty good at that. I think that probably has to do with your musical teaching, whereas opposed to somebody like me, I'm just kind of guesswork for the most part.
I feel like for me, I always had this ability to look at the big picture and understand how to articulate the details that make it work.
Yeah.
Right? So and that's something that like I guess I didn't have to work on very much, because I would always kind of gravitate into the things that I, like the best of my judgment were like the essential kind of bits of information inside this big complicated thing.
Makes sense.
And if you can kind of go in there and extract those and practice those and show them to people, they react. But I think, the Facebook Live thing took off, first of all, because the band was doing well, and, we had enough people kind of, responding to our page, so a lot of people were watching it. But I don't know, if you're kind and generous to people, they tend to appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
they respond to it.
I mean, you're giving back in more than just like video lessons. I've seen you post like, well, here I've drawn out every scale you can play, and I've seen you draw that sheet out and share that a couple times, and you're good at going back in time and resharing things that you've already posted once, which I think is beneficial, because how many times do you go through Facebook and you see something, you're like, I'm never seeing that again.
Right.
I'll never find it again.
Well, I mean, with the live videos, I wouldn't even know how to begin, because I've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of those. So, yeah. But I mean, I have students that like, go back and fish something out and share it, and then, do that. But the interesting thing about that is that, this is kind of like the new thing from the era that we live in, that you get, if you're, I guess, confident enough to interact online, which I know a lot of people are just kind of silent passengers on this live feed thing. Yep. They shouldn't be. Like, if you have a question, you're pretty likely to get it. If you ask something, I'm probably going to answer it.
Exactly.
And
you guys have always been good about that. Even if I'm just like watching, it's like, oh, you guys, it's midnight, you're on the road, you're talking about something, I'm just like, drive safe, and you're just like, oh, Peter says drive safe, thanks. And you're good at interacting with everybody, even if it's just a little bit for simple things that they're trying to say.
Well, I mean, I understand that they are people.
Exactly.
It's I don't know. It's like I don't like. It's very strange. We got to spend some time with people who were known guitar players in the 90s and 2000s that grew up in the 80s and the heyday of guitar. And they had a sort of distance from their audience it was never my experience. I never felt like,
any sort of connection to them, or?
Well, I mean, for me, like, we started from nothing, so it's like I was talking to everybody at our show, and even when we play big shows now, it's just I understand it's people. I don't think it's like my fans.
Yeah, exactly.
I must escape them to the green room. I'm going to go out of the back door before somebody talks to me.
Oh yeah.
I don't feel that way. So I understand that those people on the other side are people who are curious, and I don't know. Maybe I think psychologically it actually might break down a little bit of the mechanism of fan and artist, because I think people like to imagine you being not a person, being kind of bigger than life, and it's like you let their fantasies fill in a lot of blanks, and I can see that we don't do that, and some people are. Like I'm pretty sure, like the guys in, I don't know, Wolfpack or some band that's like huge right now, have very little interaction with their fan base, and I don't know, past a certain size maybe it's not possible, but for me it was always I just treat people the way I treat people, which is try to be as nice as I can and try to be generous. I can't subscribe to the idea of keeping your teachings secret, but I'm not trying to sell them. So that's another thing that's very different than a lot of guitar players now are just especially in gypsy jazz, and they keep having these online academies and lessons that cost subscription money, or they want you to download their lessons for like $30 a pop or something. For me, that's free, man. Just the thing that's I'm selling music. You go, you buy our albums and come to our shows, and that's all I ever wanted to do.
And that's one of the reasons I think I respected you so much about like your music is your music's everywhere on every streaming service and everywhere. So like I can access so much of your content for free that going to your shows live, buying your T-shirts. I got the Do you even shred, bro? I love that shirt. I love wearing it places. But yeah, like I mean. I go to your shows every time you're in Iowa just for the simple fact that it's like this is how I'm going to pay this band back for putting all this content online. It's not much different than like a podcast. Like comedian podcasts are a big deal right now. So like the only way to pay these comedians off for their podcasts is go see them live. I mean, granted, they're getting like ad revenue and whatever, but still, like it's the concept is still the same.
Hey, I'm wearing MeUndies right now because of Bill Burr.
Really?
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Actually, I shouldn't even mention it. I'm at a coffee shop right now. I won't mention my sponsor because it's another coffee place.
Oh, shit.
No, it's cool. It's cool. We'll talk about it afterwards. But yeah, so like your guys' online content is amazing. So much so to the fact where like your quest for tone brought you guys to, were you like crossing the border into Mexico on foot? What was all that about? I was watching that.
Yeah, so this is day 44 of a 44-day tour right now. And about halfway through it, we were playing in, we drove from, where did we drive from? From Flagstaff, Arizona from, what's the big city in Arizona?
Tucson?
No,
Arizona?
not Tucson. Phoenix. We drove from Phoenix to El Paso. And then we had two shows that day. We had one in Juarez, playing the jazz festival in Juarez. And then late at night, we had one in El Paso. And like the promoter told us, like the line to go into Mexico is like 5 minutes. And then to go back into the USA is like 7 hours.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's fucking crazy.
Yes.
Trying to get back because everybody wants to be in this country for some reason because it's awesome.
It is.
It really is awesome, dude. People that think it's not awesome should go other places. It's so awesome.
Bingo. Even other great places seem not quite as awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. Like the fact that you could just drive 44 days.
And you would know that more than anybody because of how much you're not even from here. So you would definitely know.
And in a lot of ways, socially it's not amazing. Like to hang out, there are better places to hang out in the world. But to work, oh my God, dude. It's just an amazing. Anyways, not going to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So he's like, we have to go on foot. And, because we wouldn't be able to make it back to our show in time.
So you went on foot?
So we drove to El Paso.
Okay.
But, they had a cab for me, but like some transistor head. So we got my pedal board and my head, 100-watt tube head, weighs like 100 pounds. And, our guitars, cymbals, snare drum. We parked right on the border of El Paso and Juarez. Yep. And then we walked about a mile across the bridge carrying all the gear on foot. And then they picked us up, drove us to the jazz festival. We played the gig. They drove us back. By the way, we're famous in Mexico. It's crazy. There's like single women in our shows, like Marbin. It's very weird. It's not like the U.S. at all. Then we came back, carried all our shit back on foot, got to the venue just in time, and it worked out. But I'm pretty particular about. I would have played what they had, but it would have sucked. So
Yeah. I mean,
so I'm very glad I got to play my own amp, and the people that paid money got to hear it the way I like to hear it.
exactly. I mean, there's this giant argument that is like a great musician can make any gear sound kind of like what they want it to. You can manipulate it in a fashion, or your playing style will lend itself.
I mean, you're gonna sound like you, but it's like, I don't know. I guess a great audience member would forgive you sounding 10% shitty. But do they take the same kind of...
That's true. That's true.
You know what I mean? Do you extend this logic to the audience too?
That's true.
It's like
yeah.
if the artist is so great as the audience, can the audience also be so forgiving?
Yeah, true. So it's not like you're gonna. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's like
You could show up with a line 6 and rock a line 6.
Listen, I'm gonna play the same kind of lines, the same kind of rhythms. It's just gonna sound
different.
like it's gonna sound like me playing through whatever.
Yep. Yeah.
So
makes sense.
I mean, people that are really into my playing are gonna like it, but liking my playing is also liking my music is also liking my judgments about sound.
Exactly.
And I picked that gear over a very long period of time to fit what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's faulty logic. It's like saying Van Gogh is great. He's gonna be great with a pencil. It's like, sure, he's going to be great with a pencil, but do you really want a bunch of pencil drawings in your house or in the fucking Louvre?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
you don't.
Yeah,
you want to see that guy do the thing, do the job with the right tools for the job.
That totally makes sense. That totally makes sense.
So it's not like he's going to be a terrible painter. He'll figure something out.
Yeah.
But it's like, do you want to see that like bastardized version of the thing?
Exactly.
As opposed to the thing itself?
It totally makes sense now.
Yeah.
Like, especially when it comes down to like I go to shows enough. I've seen you. This will be like my 4th or 5th time seeing you in like maybe 3 years or just under 3 years. Because like I said, you guys tour through Iowa a decent amount.
Yeah.
So I usually like to peek at everybody's pedal boards because it's like what's on there, and yours changes a decent amount.
Yeah, mine's totally different now.
Not a lot, but it does change.
Now it's totally different.
Yeah, from the first time I saw it, it's not even the same, because I think you put a video up online of it maybe not too long ago. So what's the thing that gets you to change what's on your pedal board then in regards to your tone? Because I feel like a lot of people just find something, stick with it, never change.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were a few things that were really pivotal for me. So in the beginning, I played with a lot of pedals. I think up till maybe 2014, maybe 15. And then I started playing acoustic guitar. I started getting into gypsy jazz. And I started noticing my guitar technique changing, and I was looking for a response from the guitar, from the electric guitar, that was kind of hard to explain for people who don't understand what it feels like to play lines on an acoustic guitar. But when you do it, there's a certain kind of snappiness and quickness to the notes. You start getting really used to the way an acoustic instrument behaves, that if you grow playing digital gear, my first kind of setup was like those red pods, terrible speakers and like a metal kind of thing. So it's, delay and very compressed and light touch. And you develop kind of a general guitar technique where you're kind of hitting the notes in time, but you're not really playing dynamically. It wouldn't work it doesn't translate, right? If you play it like just through a clean amp or on an acoustic guitar, you would get no sound. Yep. It would it's almost like the guitar is a MIDI controller at that point. And I was getting farther and farther away from that. And then I was noticing that my sound was compressed, and also there was a lot of signal loss because of all the cable and pedals. So I just went really minimalist. And for years I was just doing boost pedal, overdrive pedal, and a delay. And
that sounds familiar.
And that's all I really had for a long time. Delay in the effects loop, like a 100-watt head with 2 channels. I've been using the same head forever, which is a custom Audio Electronics OD100. And then at the time, I think it was an RC booster and maybe an Maxon SD9, which is really imitating Scott Henderson.
Yeah, it's a like seafoamy green kind of colored one.
Yeah,
not quite the Tube Screamer color.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So I had that for a long time, and then I replaced that distortion pedal for another one by Exotic called the Soul Driven, and I played that one for years.
Yeah, I remember that one being.
Yeah, and that's gone now. And then this year I got the G2, which is the switching system that the Gig Rig makes. The guys that have that pedal show on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that Dan he designed this switching system. It's kind of like a Bradshaw switching system, but very small. And that allowed me to bring some pedals back into the chain.
Yep.
And it also controls the channel switching of my amp, which is nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so now everything's kind of presets and no more dancing around. And
that's nice.
The latest thing that happened after that was the guy from Vertex, Mason, Vertex Pedals, reached out and sent me a bunch of pedals, and they're so good. And Mason got into some heat over. I'm not gonna get into it, but like, it's pretty funny. A lot of people online are really resentful towards him for like a scandal they had with wah pedals, and for me, I don't care like even a little bit. I just listen to pedals. I don't get into that stuff. And his pedals were just so good, because they're kind of like, Dumbles.
Okay.
And they voice your amp to sound similar to the old Dumbles. And there's one called the Ultraphonics that I use now for my lead sound. And I started this tour, and I've used it every show. I love it. It's beautiful.
Those old Dumble amps, those were made where it was like this EQs on one channel stacked to the next channel or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be.
I recently got into reading those because some people were starting to re-boutique those amps out again.
I played a few of them. They are they're different, man. they don't behave like normal amps.
That's what I've heard. And
Yeah.
I'm always intrigued to do stuff like that. And that's another thing is like you get to try a lot of gear. You guys are always going to guitar shops at local places, playing gear. You went to a guitar museum recently.
Yeah, Songbirds. That's where we played the Dumbles and some crazy old Strat.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Chattanooga.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, just that kind of stuff. The fact that you guys expose people to what you're doing when you're out there on tour.
It's not as cool as it sounds. It's like, I think maybe like my 15-year-old self would have been really envious, but like, I don't know. It was nice, but that stuff, like, I don't dig, people like Joe Bonamassa like now own like a quarter of the good gear in the world, but it's also very disillusioning because when he plays, he just sounds like Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah.
Whether you're, like, I'm not gonna pass judgment on that, but like I'm saying, it doesn't change anything you do too profoundly. It's like you should have, like, if you're gonna make guitar your life, at some point you're gonna kind of reach the gear, the high level gear and stuff that fits your playing, and maybe dial in your tone. Sure, it's like, it's good to try things, it's good to make changes, but it's like you don't need a $20,000 amp to sound good. There are a lot of things that do. There are a lot of gear at the very high level of gear does approximately the same thing. 100-watt head does a thing, and obviously like different tubes kind of change it, different speakers change it.
Yep.
But you need to get in the ballpark of what you're going for as soon as you can. And I think it's very possible, and a lot of people that are waiting for gear, it's just an excuse to not get down to business. Like if you're making a record and you're just waiting for that perfect LA studio and the nicest plugins and the best amps, and it's like, no, it's not how it works. Like, serious people make the best thing they can with what they have around them.
Yes, and sometimes that actually, having those ingredients actually creates something altogether different than what they could have created had they had all of the best things at their disposal.
Sure. And, creating something beautiful has to do with just doing your best at the time.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot of people that have a lot of money and a lot of access to the best gear are much past their peak artistically.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
true.
I mean? Like if Zeppelin had to make another record now, probably the guitars that would be on that record would be worth $100 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Because everybody would bust it out, but they're so past.
Yep.
Yep. Like Jimmy Page or something, or even like somebody younger. It's not like it's not like a new Steve Vai album.
Exactly.
It's going to be so epic now, even though he has access to the best things available.
That's true. And he even still just uses some of the old gear that he had from back in the day anyway.
'Cause,
So
I mean, for me at this point, I don't know. When we go to the studio, I just bring my amp and plug it in. I like it.
And like you said, there are so many people when you go to the studio where it's just like, we're going to amp it up and reamp it and then bi-amp it and then we're going to do different plugins on it and everything. And there's people that will just manipulate the hell out of the guitar sound in the studio as opposed to just amp.
I don't believe in that. I never reamped anything, and things react. The amp is a part of your instruments. Like it reacts to your playing. It's not something you play things through. It's like different harmonics pop out, and I would hit the string different if I wanted to create different kinds of sounds. I mean, this whole idea of of engineering, your record rather than capturing your sound is very foreign to me. But I think I have a different set of heroes. I'm more old school. Like my favorite players, like Charlie Parker and stuff, or Django, they had one sound.
Yeah.
Like the way I think about of course I use a distorted sound and delay, but that's still I'm always trying to play with my one sound. I don't have 7 distortion sounds.
Exactly.
I have one sound. It's kind of like a voice.
Yeah.
And that might change from year to year, slightly, maybe going through a different pedal, but I don't think the interesting thing, some players really have this idea that every time they play a solo, it needs to have a different sound to it or it's boring. It's it's not how it's you need your playing to be the interesting part. If you draw too much attention to the way you're coloring your tone, it's cool, but what are you showcasing the best of pedal a NAMM show of 2019?
Yeah.
That's the point of making an album.
Yeah, it's the NAMM of tones. And I get what you're saying. That's where it can be distracting. Where and I'm not trying to, because I play in a band with a guy with a Kemper, but one of the distracting things about a Kemper is you could have a Fender Twin and then a Marshall and then a 6505 tone all coming out in the same song, and if you know what's going on, you're man, these tones they sound good, but it's also man, you would need so much gear to try to recreate this live if you had to, and I don't know.
I don't buy that camper stuff. It's
I heard you on the walk down to Mexico. Your thought process on that.
Yeah, I
one.
was quoting Mason from Vertex. He said he had the best analogy. He said that digital stuff is trying to sell blow-up dolls to sex addicts. It's you just are not in. If you had a taste of the real thing, you're just not in. Listen, this is the way I think about it. But jokes aside, people will always try to find the tools that make them fit into the context they're playing in. The problem is that there are very few people anymore that play with real contexts.
Okay.
Meaning backing tracks has become the thing you put guitar sounds on.
Yep.
Through your computer speakers. So if you're playing through a Marshall, the mids coming from your speaker are not going to fit in the mix in your house of what's coming through. It's not going to blend in the air. It's going to squash it.
Yep.
So you go for more and more digital gear because it's not a Marshall. It's Marshall in a frame.
Yep.
It's Marshall inside the computer, in the box. It's digital Marshall. It has the Marshall-y thing, but it's so tiny that it fits in the tiny world that your pretend musicians are in. And then when you go to the show and you mic them up and you throw them through the PA, all you're doing is you're mixing that backing track through the PA and your things. It doesn't have a place in the real sonic space of the room. We don't play like that. So it's I'm playing, with a real drum set, and I'm not using any monitors on stage other than for saxophone.
Yep.
I'm hearing the bass from the bass amp. I'm hearing the drums from the acoustic drums. There's no if I had if I had a digital kind of thing, it would just disappear. I would have to basically mix everything in my monitors and then mix the guitar in there too to hear it.
Yeah.
So it's just like every speaker in the room, you're basically mixing a little record, and then you have this like miniature picture of music. It's not the acoustically what we're going for.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the benefits of the Kemper could be outweighed by maybe your proclivity to tone easily. Because like the benefit is I can carry 476 different amp models all in one carryable doohickey to any show. So it is.
The benefit is if you're playing the kind of music where guitar is a tiny detail that needs to fit in a very rich mix,
Yes.
then it's gonna be fine.
Yep.
If you're trying to be a voice on your instrument and play music, basically electroacoustic music, which is what rock was till very recently, then it's not gonna work. You know, I mean, a student of mine bought me tickets to go see Generation X, and I saw Tosin Obasi and then Nuno Bettencourt, and it's like seeing like a tiny person and a giant. Because when you see like two big Marshalls and a fractal,
Yep.
back to back, it's just like one of them sounds like a joke.
I totally get what you're saying, because even if you dial in like this is the most perfect we can make whatever digital sound like amp number X, and then you go live and you hear amp number X, they sound a little bit different. Like you can like you and I could tell, maybe like the layman couldn't, but I've also been someone who's like, I'm gonna go buy this amp and I'm gonna go buy that amp, and this one sounds different and I'm gonna try that one out. So I've been trying to like go through different amps and try different pedals, so I know how tone can and should sound. But like like you said, maybe to the layman they might not understand that this thing is just kind of like a boxed version.
The layman won't understand because it's very subtle. It's also the fact that an amp, when you're playing electric guitar, like for me, I hate playing like not 100 watt heads. Like if I have to play a 50 watt tube head, it drives me crazy because just when you get used to the amount of air moving into the headroom and the dynamic range. I tried to play a Friedman. I bought a Friedman and I sold it after one show, and it's because it was just too compressed. I couldn't get the amp to behave in a way that made sense with the way I learned how to play guitar. It was too. I feel that way about humbuckers too. It's like it covers up so much of your playing that if you're the kind of player that worked on precision and you're not hitting strings you're not trying to hit, and you play everything fairly cleanly, then you get to enjoy the volume, the slight volume changes coming from your right hand. And if something just kind of squashes everything to where it takes it away from you, then you really feel like you don't have any sort of room. It's like you're in a prison where you can't express yourself with like that thing of pushing a little bit and pulling a little bit back. It's more like how. Obviously, it's not for laymen, but it's the shading of your playing. It's the very like tiny minutia that makes you feel like you're actually speaking.
Yeah, you lose a lot of articulation.
Yeah, and it's like, to me, it's like when I lose it, I really feel like I'm sucking. Right?
Yeah.
It feels like my instrument, like the tiny bit of freedom I have, just got taken.
Yeah, it's like now you can only speak in a monotone voice, and this is like all the better you can get.
Sure.
It doesn't get any louder or quieter, and everything sounds like
Yeah, it's exactly. It's kind of like that. So it's like you're always, if you're used to have like it's 2% more freedom, and then it gets taken away. You really it becomes all you think about it.
Bingo.
Yeah,
that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, but if you're not aware that exists, and you're just trying to, you're the kind of player that's just trying to play a part, I can totally see where it's like just pressing buttons, like gain. So, and that's like you just different. That's different. That's different. That's different. But like for me, it just feels like.
Yeah, and I mean that was something I was actually thinking about on the drive down here. Was this? It's not like I feel like a lot of, and I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody else, but I feel like too many people lean on the gain knob too hard. It's just like, well, gain, it sounds good, it's metal, it's heavy, it's distorted or whatever, and like you said, it brings that compressed thing in there that kind of just takes away from some of your articulation that you have.
Yeah, there's also the issue of like it could be very scary to stand next to a loud amp.
Yeah.
And if you hear if you put your ear hypothetically against your own mouth and heard yourself speak, all the breath and lip and spit noises, you might be like afraid to make a sound because you're hyper aware at that point.
Yep.
And when you're playing with when we were opening for Alan Holdsworth, the whole bottom cab, the bottom like two cabs that he used for his lead tone, he would flip over and shoot them backwards because he didn't want to hear it. So a lot of times people use reverb or delay to put distance, not between the audience and their sound, but between themselves and the sound.
Okay.
They're afraid of their own sound, so reverb just artificially makes it sound like it's far away. The problem is that obviously from where the audience is standing, you sound like you're actually far away, and then you have reverb on top of it. So you have the actual reverb and the digital reverb, and it just makes it sound like you're in a cave. But the psychological reason of using reverb is just because to put that distance between you and your sound, because it's scary to be the one controlling the sound.
It's very
when you're
true.
right there, and a lot of times it's like flipping the amp the other way or wearing earplugs or something like that actually gives you the distance you need from your sound, or just getting used to it, which is it's hard. But pianists have the same problem when they overuse that sustain pedal, just to make it sound ambient. But the problem is it sounds soupy when you stand a few feet away.
Starting to lose articulation in there, all those nuancical bits. This is actually a really great conversation because it's been a while since I've sat down and thought about music this deeply, and you're somebody that obviously this is all you do is just sit down and think about music as deeply as you do. Which, if anybody goes online, they'll figure it out in a hurry that this is what you guys are all about. And you guys are everywhere online. You got Facebook is where you're probably most popular.
Bandcamp.
You're on Bandcamp. I think I saw on Instagram as well. It's Marbin Music. Is that on everywhere? Is it Marbin Music?
Marbin Music.
Marbinmusic.com.
Yep.
You guys are finishing up a tour as of the day we're recording this. But
that's right. Last day of tour right now.
But I'm sure you're going to go on tour again. 'Cause
Yeah,
you guys are
January.
Okay, so you're taking like a month off. And,
yeah.
All right, so you take the holidays off and go back out on tour. I don't know what that tour is, but I'm sure you're coming back through.
Not Iowa. We're going to Texas and down south, deep south.
Makes sense. Wintertime, go south.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and then, we have a new album coming out December 1st.
Cool.
Yeah, it's called Strong Thing. It's all ready.
Awesome.
And it's already. We're selling the VIP package which is. You can get it for the I don't know when this is coming out. I think it's going to be only till next Friday, but it comes with a limited edition T-shirt and
cool.
Marbin Strikes Back coffee table book. Yeah. So there's only 7 days to get that, but after that we'll start pre-sale for just the album.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
That Marbin Strikes Back coffee table book. It'll be worth it for that alone.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that's available right now on our Bandcamp, but only till next Friday.
Okay, cool. Cool, man.
After that will be the pre-sale, and then December 1st, Strong Thing comes out.
That's awesome. Strong Thing's the name of the new album.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I've been following you guys for your last 3 albums. It's been fun to see you guys live, see you at shows.
Well, tonight's all new music. You've never heard any of it.
Cool. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
I'm really, really happy you sat down. Took some time out of your day to sit down and talk with me a little bit here. We've given shout-outs. So we've talked about Marbin, your band. We've talked about shows you got coming up, choosing tone, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to toss in here while we're talking?
Go to marbinmusic.bandcamp.com. There's a free sampler there. If it's absolutely free. If you're not into buying music, you can just download it. It has one song from every album, and you can just enjoy it.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. One from every album.
Yep.
You get a little tiny snapshot of a taste from everything.
That's right.
Dude, that's cool, man. Yep. That's really cool. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight at Lefty's, man. So it's going to be great.
Fun.
All right. Well, check you later, man. Hey, that was an awesome episode. And I mean, amazing. I had a great time sitting down talking with Dani. Great guy. It's really cool that somebody came here from another country to learn music, to further their knowledge, and now came back after learning all this music and made a band and is traveling the U.S. doing what he loves. And you know what? Check out that new album he's got coming out. I would literally do the pre-order for that just for the coffee table book. The Marbin Strikes Back stuff is amazing. They've done a really good job of compiling everything they do and making it sellable. At their merch table, I saw sheet music for all of their tunes, and the sheet music has stories for some of the songs that they have, because almost every song they have has a story behind it. And it's just one of those things where I don't know if I've met any bands that have been this marketable and done this good. They're just doing all sorts of things. They're always on Facebook Live talking to people. I mean, it's nonstop. I enjoy seeing Marbin just about every time they come to town. Like I might have mentioned in the podcast, I've seen them maybe 4 or 5 times. It's crazy. I mean, I always used to joke that you get the most notes for your dollar watching Marbin play live, and it was kind of just a joke, but it's kind of true though too. I mean, they're a little bit shreddy, but not always shreddy. I used to always take Snapchats and throw them up on my little Snapchat story for people to check them out. People would always be like, "Who is that?" It's like, "Oh, it's Marbin," you know. Dani does all sorts of cool things. He puts little videos online of lessons he's doing. They say hi to everybody while they're in the van on tour. Just a great group of people. I really, really dig the music, and I dig everything they've got going on. So I really appreciate everything. I want to say huge thanks to Dani for taking some time out of his day on the last day of his tour to sit down and talk with me in a coffee shop in Des Moines. So shout out to Dani for doing that. I really appreciate it. The show at Lefties was amazing. The bands were all amazing. I had a great time. It's kind of weird going to shows alone, but sometimes you run into people you know there. I saw a couple people from the Eleanors there. You guys might remember the Eleanors from one of my older episodes. I did an episode with David Tillenhast Jr. We call him Till. That was episode 59. And I've recently got to know some of those guys a little bit, and they're amazingly fun people to hang out with. I had a good time sitting down and chatting with them at the show, so hats off to the guys in the Eleanors, guys and gals in the Eleanors for stopping by and, checking out the show, keeping me company a little bit. I kind of just invaded their table, but whatever, rock and roll. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate you guys letting me sit down next to you and talk a bunch. So hats off to you guys. I really appreciate it. I just want to let everybody know that you can go to www.couchtowncoffee.com and check out all their goodies. They've been so good to us. You can enter the code word Marbin this week and save 20%. It's hard to beat that. There's big box companies that won't even offer you 20% off. And this is somebody in Iowa that is roasting coffee that is offering you 20% off. It's local companies don't usually just be like, "Well, I'm giving you 20% off," but Couchtown Coffee is. So go to couchtowncoffee.com, find a coffee you like, make an order, use the code word Marbin, and you will save 20% just because you're listening to this episode, just because you're listening to this podcast. That's how much Couchtown Coffee loves local music, and that's how much Couchtown Coffee loves you, because they make some of the greatest coffee, not just in Iowa, but across the U.S. It's easily some of my favorite coffee I've ever had. And I'm not just saying that because they're the sponsor of the podcast. I enjoy that coffee a lot. I've bought so much of that coffee and shipped it across the U.S. to people just because why not? Just because why not? I really enjoy it, and it's that good, and I figured everybody else will like it too. I know you'll like it. Go to www.couchtowncoffee.com, check it out, enter that code word Marbin, save yourself some monies, and drink some Couchtown coffee tomorrow morning. It's going to be great stuff. I also want to let everybody know you can go to www.audiblefarm.com. Audible Farm has all sorts of goodies. I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I started out doing Audible Farm by recording music at shows because I just wanted to let everybody have an opportunity to see some of the awesome bands that I had seen live as well. So I would send these people. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, check this band out," or whatever. They're here. They're live. They're really cool. And I've got videos on the YouTube channel. I've got the podcast on the YouTube channel. If that's not where you're listening right now, all the podcasts are also on the YouTube channel. All that stuff is on audiblefarm.com. You can find links where to listen. You can find an app that I guarantee you probably have that you can listen to the music with. There's also little players right in the website. There's one that you can listen from SoundCloud or YouTube if you like YouTube. I've got the playlists right there. There's links to all of our social media as well on there: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are all over the place. It's wild. Lately, we've been doing really good with the t-shirt sales. I'm down to the single digits. I'm sold out of smalls. I'm sorry. There were so many people that said, "Save me a shirt. I'll buy one next time I see you." Well, I had about 50 or 60 people tell me that, and I didn't even have that many shirts to begin with. So I just kind of went on the first come, first serve. Whoever's got cash and shows up with it first is going to be the people that get the shirts. And I'm out of smalls. I got medium, large, and extra large left. And like I said, I've got single-digit quantities of all three combined. So you might want to hop on that if you want a T-shirt. I do have some other things in the works. I've debated whether or not to order more shirts. If I do, I don't know if I might get a different style or size or colors or different quantities. I'm not sure. I'm still kind of tossing it all up in the air, but I do have some more merch in the works. So if you missed out on the T-shirts, hang tight. I might have something for you next week. Maybe even the week after. I don't know. We'll see. I've got some more stuff in the works. So don't fret if you didn't get a shirt. There are still plenty of opportunities to get Audible Farm merch. Well, as a matter of fact, if you wear, medium through extra large, you can get a shirt right now. So don't fret. Go ahead and get yourself a shirt. If not, you can just kind of hold off and find something good coming up later. And there's all sorts of goodies there. I do have a little bit of advertising. I do as far as Facebook and things like that. I share all that stuff, but it's tough to find everything you need to find on Facebook. It's tough to find the right people or to see everything that somebody posts, because not everything gets shared, the right way or whatever. One of the cool things I started on Facebook was the Audible Farm Iowa Live Music and Entertainment Promotion Group. Anybody who's got a band, music, I don't care what you got. I don't care if you're juggling on the street corner and you made a Facebook event for it. Share that thing in there. Let me know what's going on. Let everybody know what's going on. There's just over 100 people in the group right now, and I kind of invited some people, and I hope everybody invites their buddies to it. And recently I've had some really cool posts in here. For example, this Saturday, RWC is going to be at the Poorhouse in Humboldt. That'll be sweet. Let's see, what else do we got posted in the group recently? Rockin' Picnic. Rockin' Picnic's already got an event for next year. Dang. That's awesome. So they're ready. They're ready for it. I hope you don't miss Rockin' Picnic. I did a little podcast with Scott Dahl about the Rockin' Picnic, since he is kind of one of the MCs / hosts / all around good guys that kind of helps direct the traffic and run the show. So I really appreciate everybody at the Rockin' Picnic in Humboldt for setting that up. If you want to see any of these events, any of these shows, any of these podcasts, anything that's being shared in the group, go to Audible Farm on Facebook and find the Audible Farm Live Music and Entertainment Promotion Group. Share whatever you want in there, as long as it's any remotely entertainment-based anything. There's another post. The 96th episode of I Hear IC Radio is also on there. I Hear IC is a radio show that's also a podcast. You might want to check that out. It's a pretty cool one down in the Iowa City area. Oh, let's see here. We shared all sorts of goodies on here. Looks like there's an event called Holiday Hell that's coming up, and believe it or not, that one I believe I'm going to be playing on that show. You might want to check it out. Oh man, there's all sorts of goodies shared on there. Just go there, check it out, share some of your own events if you'd like to. Invite all your bandmates, invite all your buddies. There's all sorts of goodies on Facebook. Check out the past episodes. You can find those anywhere. Wherever you're listening to this right now, I'm sure the past episodes are there. You can find them on YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, whatever. Whatever you want to find them on, they're all there. I want to say thanks once again to Dani for joining me on this podcast. I had an amazing time sitting down talking with him. Safe travels everywhere you guys go in Marbin. I really appreciate you guys constantly coming through Iowa and doing shows. I really, really appreciate it. I also want to say thanks once again to Couchtown Coffee. I want to say thanks to everybody that's been posting in that Audible Farm group on Facebook. Check out audiblefarm.com for everything Audible Farm. Don't forget to check out Couchtown Coffee. I want to say a huge shout out to all of our partners, the Fort Dodge Fine Arts Association, the Indie Music Room with Heather Kelly, which is another podcast based out of Fort Dodge that's kind of doing what we're doing, but they're doing it a little bit differently. I recommend everybody check that one out. That's cool. Otherwise, we got the Iowa Podcast Network and PodcastIA, a couple of podcast networks in the Iowa area that have been doing a little bit of work here and there, and I really appreciate those guys helping me out when the podcast started. They did the best they could to put me on this little pedestal to say, hey, here's another good podcast, check it out. So tip of the cap to you two groups for doing what you did when the podcast started out. I really, really appreciate it. Check out the website, check out Couchtown Coffee. I got to take off. I got to go to class. So we'll check you guys later. Peace.